You guys, take it away, Peter.
All right, you guys. I just spoke about all this weekend. I've mentioned his name a few times. We have Dwight Balboa here. I think Dwight was probably the first person I ever probably took a private from in my entire life in any dance, I think. But anyways, Dwight was instrumental in a couple of things as far as Balboa history goes that few people really know about today. I think more and more are finding out, but Dwight was one of the people responsible for introducing Sylvia Sykes to Maxie Dorf, as well as people like Dean Collins, who was also a Lindy dancer and so forth. And over the years, Dwight's been instrumental in studying a lot of dances across the country, actually, especially some of the more unique styles of dance that aren't spoken about today. And in my opinion, if there is such a thing as a Balboa historian, it would be this gentleman here, Dwight, for the simple fact that when he first came to Los Angeles and kind of got to know and study and dance around these people, he came at it as a outsider looking in and just kind of taking notes and looking at all these dancers and kind of trying to figure out what they're doing with their feet. And over the years, he's met so many of them that he's instrumental, like I said, in comparing all the old-time Balboa dancers as to what people are doing today. And with that said, Dwight, what year did you first come to Los Angeles?
I came in '81, I think. I first saw Balboa 30 years ago in Seattle. And there was a couple there named John and Bonnie, and they were the only ones that did Balboa in Seattle. And it was the first time I saw it, and they were just dancing in closed position, and they were shuffling their feet on the floor. I had just learned some ballroom at the time, some waltz and foxtrot and rumble and stuff like that, and swing. And I had found out that these dances had a structure, a basic pattern. So you learn the basic pattern, and everything was variations of that. So I figured there was a basic to Balboa too. And I asked John what the basic was. He had no idea what I was talking about when I said basic step. He just didn't mean anything to him. And I asked him to show me what the Balboa was, and he couldn't do that. You just dance. You just dance. And I asked him how he learned, and he just learned by watching. There was some sailors from California that came up to Seattle. Well, a couple of years later, I moved down to Southern California, and at that time, there were just hundreds of Balboa dancers. This was almost 30 years ago. And you go to any big band dance that had a decent floor, or jazz music, something like that, there would always be some Balboa dancers. And I did the same thing. I'd watch them real closely, could not figure out what they were doing. And would ask them, what's the basic step? Same response. They didn't know what I was talking about. And I asked them, well, how they learned, and they said the same thing, just by watching. Or a lot of them said that what Dean Raftery said yesterday. And this sounds weird, but they said they'd watch, and they'd go home, turn the radio on, and practice the refrigerator. Now, a lot of them said that. And I guess that's why I've never become good at this dance, because I couldn't bring myself to dance with a refrigerator. And it sounded kind of kinky. I didn't even want to know about it. So I kept watching, and I figured out what one couple was doing, sort of. But I looked at another couple that were doing something else. And I kept asking these Balboa dancers about how they learned the same thing. And some of them said, well, they could tell what high school you went to and what year you graduated by the way you did your Balboa. And that sort of made sense to me, because I graduated in '62, that's when the twist came out. And I was at Lincoln High School, and we did the twist one way, and Roosevelt High School did the twist another way, and Garfield High School. So I said, okay, that makes sense, because I see different ways of doing Balboa. Maybe that way of doing it is from the high school, this way from another high school, another. So I started asking, this is where I got thought of as a historian. I'd go out and ask these strangers what high school they went to when they graduated. And they were kind of puzzled seeing some stranger come up and ask me these questions. I would say I watched hundreds of Balboa dancers, and maybe 40 or so very, very closely. and talk to them. And as far as I can tell, these different styles of Balboa don't have anything to do with high schools. But I found out a lot about high schools in Southern California, and I guess I'll leave it there.
I guess my question, to take it from there, now that you've kind of laid that foundation down, as far as some of the, again, Orange County pure Balboa dancers and so forth, who would you say were the most influential to you watching? I know one of the people that you kind of got to know was Hank Nigley.
Right.
Do you want to talk about some of these people, maybe?
Well, Hank in particular was a gold mine of information. Hank knew Dean, ran around with Dean Collins. He was very big in the scene, and he was kind of an interesting guy in the sense that he was a Balboa dancer, and you can sort of see what he does, but he did an 8-count basic over and over and over. That's all he did. No traveling steps. But he had some variations. He would mix the thing up, and he knew everybody. And we'll talk about this later, but there was really two crowds down in Southern California. There was a Balboa crowd and there was a swing crowd. And Hank was unusual in that he bridged those two. He was friends with the Balboa dancers and danced Balboa. He was also friends with the swing dancers and danced swing. And I learned a lot from Hank, both about the scene, the culture, the dances, the dance halls, the people, all that stuff. So as a source of information, he and Willie Desitol. Now Willie was the first guy that would show me the basic step. I saw Willie at Bobby McGee's, and they had these jam sessions where one couple would come out at a time with a fast number. And I was watching this guy, and he had the fanciest footwork of any dancer I've ever seen. And after he got off the floor, I asked him, what are you doing in Balboa? He said, yes. And I went through the same litany, well, it's basic, when you learn about what high school you went to and all that stuff. And I asked him what the basic step was. And to my surprise, he showed, oh yeah, I'll show you. And he did right there on the carpet. And then he said, well, I teach. And this is probably 81 or so. And so he said, here's my card, here's where I teach. I teach Balboa, and I started going to take classes from Willie. And one thing that was kind of interesting is I learned a lot from Willie about the basic Balboa. What he's noted for is swing. He would show me his basic, but then that's not really what he did. And then I watched the other Balboa dancers, and most of them weren't doing that basic, they were doing something else.